From Broadway to cabaret, from Los Angeles to Nashville, 2020 has covered the entertainment beat and many of the biggest stars of our time. Part of our 10th anniversary special, when 2020 continues.
Saturday, the true test.
For the years on 2020, we've had a most remarkable range of entertainers. We ourselves have sat and been thrilled by their performances, and we've had the opportunity to get to know of their life backstage. They are some of the greatest names in show business, rare and wonderful. And Bob Brown has gotten to know them best. Bob?
Barbara, in reporting on these people, what we focused on most was the creative process they used and what elements in their past or personalities helped to make them creative. Of course, the truly greats have something indefinable, but at least we've been able to put you in a room with them, see what goes into their work, and then watch them get excited by it.
We were thinking, we've got to have the number that would be the one that would absolutely pinpoint it. I mean, a hugely, and in a sense, somewhat unreal emotional moment.
Andrew Lloyd Webber's Memory may be the most popular song to come from the musical theater in the 1980s. We first heard it when we followed an unusual production called Cats from London to its Broadway opening. Over 10 years of stories on entertainment and the arts, our favorite memories include profiles of people as different as Mel Torme and Willie Nelson and Liberace, Bob Dylan and Barry Manilow, and behind-the-scenes glimpses, after hours, Hall & Oates listening to the music of the street, Disneyland past the stroke of midnight, and this cocktail lounge in Los Angeles. In 1980, Billy Joel described it to correspondent Tom Hoving as a place in which he once played and wrote a song about.
You gotta feel it all right.
Los Angeles isn't really a bar town, so the people who went to this place were real bar people.
Now Paul's a real estate novelist.
There was a guy who always wanted to be a novelist, but he was a real estate broker, and he was always talking about the novel he was going to write.
With Davy, who's still in the Navy.
There was a guy who would always bet on the horses and always lose and always come in. And there was always the guy who would come in, the real Hollywood type guy, with the, Gucci stuff, and they'd bring his chick with him, and he'd try to be real, hey, kid, and he'd rub my neck. What are you doing here? I can get you a recording contract. And I was like, nah, that's a dirty business. I want to stay here. I like what I'm doing.
Yeah, rehearsal of this.
We've learned about movie making from profiles of directors John Huston and David Lean, Steven Spielberg and Ron Howard, about acting from Richard Burton and Dustin Hoffman and Ingrid Bergman, comedy from the likes of Neil Simon and Rodney Dangerfield, Bob Newhart, Joan Rivers, and this master of characterization, Billy Crystal, who said some of his best friends didn't realize that was him playing Sammy Davis Jr. in a sketch opposite the real Jesse Jackson.
It would be an honor to help you, babe. Now, what we gotta do is loosen you up a little bit. You're a little stiff. Come on, dance with me, man.
Crystal's first comic impressions as a kid were of his relatives gathered in the family living room.
I would go out into the room as them in my Uncle Mac's hat and coat and do him to him, and I was 5 years old. Why are you talking so loud, Mac? But the living room was the great room to play in my house, and it was always a warm, great feeling. See, what happens in the living room is you get on the table, and then you start working the room. And the relatives would give me coins, and usually dimes, and I would put them on my forehead. It would be like this, because it would just stick. And when your head was filled with the coins, the show was over. And you go back to the room, my brothers would go, how'd you do? I said, $1.10. It was a good night.
Come on, baby. Come on, baby. Come on. Come on. Woo!
Michael Jackson started entertaining younger than just about anyone. Almost 9 years ago, Sylvia Chase learned from Michael what we now know are his most striking characteristics. The contrast between his dominating presence on stage and his offstage shyness.
Being around, everyday people and stuff, I feel strange. I do.
Shy?
Yeah. That's something I work on, but a lot of my family is like that.
There are some people who believe that having always been on stage, you've never had to deal with the real world.
Yeah, that's true in one way. That's true in one way, but it's hard to in my position. I try to sometimes, and but people won't deal with me in that way because they see me differently. They won't talk to me like they will the next door neighbor. So it becomes difficult.
I can't stop loving you.
I bet you ought to know, girl, I made up my mind. I have to live in memories. Long, sometimes.
This 1981 portrait of the legendary genius Ray Charles was the story of a musician who lost his sight early in his childhood and after the death of his mother left Florida at the age of 15 and began his first year on his own as a professional musician.
If you were coming up and like I was, you could go in and sit in with these great musicians. And they would really kick your behind because they could play so much, You say, oh, my God, how could he do that much with a piano? I don't believe it, And can make you feel bad enough to go back home and study some more.
Your cheating heart.
For Hank Williams Jr., succeeding on his own meant overcoming the ghost of his famous father, who had died burned out on alcohol and painkillers at the age of 29.
It was driving me crazy. I had a psychiatrist tell me, he said, hey, you've been taught, live like, act like, be like, sing like your daddy. Your lifestyle is exactly like his, and you're going to be gone too. And I said, to hell with this. I'm not putting up with this crap. And I just left and I said, bye.
This was just one of some spectacular performances we've shown you in 10 years. We've also seen at their best Diana Ross, Tina Turner, Rod Stewart, Kenny Rogers, Paul McCartney, Simon and Garfunkel. Not to mention Sir George Solti of the Chicago Symphony, and in separate profiles, Alexander Godunov and Mikhail Baryshnikov.
Ain't no rookies up here. Hey, you ain't begging. Oh, let her shake it. Going on down in my hillbilly farm.
You do it, and it's through, and you put it together. It's either a failure or a success. But failure is your fault. Success is your fault. That's a good feeling.
I've got a crush on you, sweetie pie, all the day and night.
Change was a constant theme with many of the artists we met. We watched Linda Ronstadt learn from the late Nelson Riddle as she changed her style from rock to old standards.
That I could fall, so much emotion.
I hear all these songs, and people have been listening to them. All these people have interpreted them, but they're great, and they've kind of been on the shelf for just long enough to have their little batteries charged up again. And I wasn't trying to do a period piece necessarily, or something that was nostalgic or reminiscent of another time, of the good old days. I'm just trying to do the music.
Mr. Sandman was a hit around the time Linda was starting school in the 50s. And you could see in her face that learning those harmonies was a little like going all the way back to school. where the first thing they make you do is practice. It was a totally different kind of vocal reflex and coordination. No individual phrasing, keeping the voices precisely in tune, and in the end,
Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make him the cutest that I've ever seen.
We play the games that people play.
In 1983, we filmed Lionel Richie's first solo concert after he left the Commodores. He was already a hit songwriter with a proven ear for commercial musical hooks.
I say the hook, it's the title first. If the song is called Easy, I work on I'm easy, I'm easy. That's the most important thing. And then after that, if the song is called Sail On, Sail On, you want to go right for where people will be focusing on. After that, I work on mood. You know where you go. Now this paints the picture. It opens it up. And then after I finally make it breathe, then I start. And that's the verse. Then after that, you go into you once, you twice.
3 times a lady.
That's the hook.
And I love you.
We followed the era of British musicals by showing you, even before they opened on Broadway, The Phantom of the Opera, with Michael Crawford's Tony Award-winning performance. And Les Miserables. One of the best-known songs from that show turned out to be This Prayer for the Life of a Young Man, written for singer Carl Wilkinson, added into the show at the last moment. Directors Trevor Nunn and John Caird remembered the first time Wilkinson sang it in front of the rest of the cast when the show was still in rehearsal.
Bring him home. Bring him home. Bring him
And by the end of it, the company were completely stunned. They were absolutely silent. It was Trevor who said to everybody, well, that's the prayer. And I told you, he said, I told you that this show was all about God. And one of the actors said, yes, but you didn't tell us you'd engaged him to sing it.
I'm playing God again. Why not? At my age, anything I do is a miracle.
This profile of George Burns was broadcast in 1980 when he was a young man of 84.
Give me a real good cigar.
Even when he isn't out on a promotion, he is seen almost always with younger women. He enjoys their company, he says, leaving everyone free to think what they will. There's a story that Walter Matthau once asked Burns, when did sex stop for you? And Burns replied, at 2 o'clock this morning.
Give me a real good cigar.